Thank you so much for that excellent introduction. I think it said it all. Welcome everybody. Great to see people dropping in. So it's a great honor to be here. I have to thank the Mechanical Engineering Department for inviting me and nominating me. So I am here because I have a really cool hobby project. So this is my hobby project. It still is my hobby project. So when I was in graduate school for engineering at the University of Denver here in Colorado, I spent 10 years in Colorado, so it's kind of home turf. You know, when you're a student, engineering student, cadet, you have so much spare time and spare money that you need a solid hobby project. That's of course a joke. I had no life outside school, you have no life outside school. but the fact is, if you squeeze in an hour of work between physics assignments and math homework, you squeeze in 5 minutes in break time, you look something up, you learn something new, you work on something. If you do that every day for years on end, you can end up with an amazing big project. Efforts of this type typically take huge budgets, lots of people, but if you're really clever and hardworking, you can do it with very small groups of people. You don't really need big organizations, you need dedicated leaders and dedicated team members. And important to understand that the leadership is not management. In the leadership role, you work as hard or harder than anybody else. You're not having people work for you, you work with people. So my title, Building the World's Fastest Electric Motorcycle, you can do it too. You should not interpret that literally, unless you want to be a competitor. I welcome you. Be happy to do so. You can check out my website and Facebook page and you can see all my secrets. So you're welcome to be a competitor. I would love that. But it's more an idea of you can run your own project. It's very satisfying. It's a very exciting journey. But you have to understand that that is a marathon and not the sprint. You embark on a big project, it's not going to be done today, not this week, maybe not even this year. And you have to learn to rest, not to quit when things get tough. So I will take you on my journey in running a relatively big project. I mean, it's not big like the International Space Station, but from a one-person perspective, this is a big project. So I'm claiming that this is the world's fastest electric motorcycle. So let's put that in a bit of a perspective. So I have a little scale here from 100 miles per hour to 1,000 miles per hour, and I am there. So you can see there's lots of room left above. I am just below the fastest production car. It was built by a small Swedish company. I am Swedish, by the way, originally. That's where my funny mix of accents come from. Moved to Colorado in 2008 for love, still married to the same guy, and then a year ago left for New Zealand, for a job in New Zealand. The Koenigsegg car is fast, but is not even close to the world's fastest wheel-driven car that last year broke over 500 miles per hour. That is quite fast compared to your family car. My Prius doesn't even make that kind of speed. I'm glad if I can get it up to 80. In 1899, the world's fastest car was at 62 miles per hour, and it was electric, it was battery powered. So 100 years ago, battery powered vehicles were the fastest ones. For the past 100 years, internal combustion has completely dominated, and I want to change that, and you will see why in a bit. Today, the world's fastest car is built by a competing university, Ohio State University. It's a student team with a huge budget. That is still quite slow compared to the world's fastest motorcycle, which is at 398 miles per hour. That is pale in comparison to the fastest car. That is at supersonic speed, so about 763 miles per hour. That, again, it's slow compared to the latest Contender, which is partially being built by the Royal Air Force in the UK, and they're shooting for 1,000 miles per hour by combining a hybrid rocket and a jet engine. So that's the kind of the landscape of speed, and you can see why the desire for speed never really ends, because there's always another record to be broken. So, one important thing with all of these projects is that, maybe exception for that family car, none of these projects were built by big corporations or large organizations. these were individuals or small groups of individuals that had a dream, said, just sit down, probably in the pub, and said, you know, why don't we build the world's fastest car? This sounds like a really cool thing. If you want seats, there are lots of seats up front here. If you prefer to stand, that's okay as well. So, I am the internet generation, so of course I love memes. And I've been working on this for 10 years, and just quite recently I found a meme that really summarized 10 years of effort for me. I never managed to track down the original author, but I will share it with you because I thought it was really a good summary of how it is to lead a project. So a dream written down with a date becomes a goal. A goal broken down into steps becomes a plan. And a plan backed by action becomes reality. And that's really what project management is. So what was my dream? Well, my dream was actually not about speed, amazingly as it may sound. My dream was completely different. My dream is to get people to understand that electric cars is actually the way to get around. I don't know if we can get a little bit less light, if that's possible. Perfect, there we can see it. So this is a cold Colorado evening a few years ago, and my electric car is defrosted because I turned it on the app, and then I could go to the gym. So electric cars are a complete no-brainer for commuting in an urban setting. This is a Nissan Leaf. It's the second best car I've ever owned. The best car I've ever owned is the slightly newer Nissan Leaf I own now and drive in Auckland, New Zealand. So this is really the perfect solution for urban transportation. It's comfortable, it's peppy, it's cheap to drive, there's no air pollution, energy independence, all of this. It's just a great solution. But despite that, well, it's a perfect match, as to say, with solar panels. This is my house in Colorado, which I still own. But despite that, a recent consumer survey showed that people don't even know you can buy these cars. And I don't know how people missed Tesla. That's completely impossible for me to understand. But apparently people have missed you can buy electric cars. I have been in electric vehicles since before it was cool, like 10, 15 years ago. But still the problem is electric vehicles are not cool and people don't know you can buy them. So we don't really get any of these benefits from electric vehicles because people don't buy them. So the idea was, and that's really what became the goal, if I build an insanely fast electric vehicles, I smash world records, I make headlines, then that will open people's minds about these vehicles. And they see, oh, an electric vehicle is really fast. Huh, wonder if I can have one of those as my daily driver. People start looking and realize, oh, there's one I can buy from the dealer. And then you get a change in motion. So that was the goal to accomplish this dream. But buying a car is an emotional purchase. It isn't enough that it's really sensible and cheap and good. It also has to be sexy. So I figured out it has to be sexy, it has to be good looking, something that appealed to people that wouldn't care much for Greenpeace activists. So I came up with my own term for it. I call it eco-activism in disguise. I'm trying to make the world a better place, but I'm kind of bypassing all the debates, the activists, the stuff that makes people upset. Let's go into the straight to the sexy, practical, and get people's attention at 270 miles per hour. So that was the goal. How do you make this? So how do you make the plan to accomplish this goal? So my husband and I, he's a mechanical engineer as well. We basically just one day decided, why don't we build the world's fastest electric vehicles of some kind? We had a very limited budget. I was on a graduate stipend. He works as an engineer for NOAA in Boulder, so a government salary. So there had to be something that was really budget friendly, but would still be insanely fast. So we came to the conclusion a sidecar motorcycle, that was the ultimate vehicle. It's a weird creature. Hard to really get a feeling for what it looks like. I was sent around a scale model, this 3D printed. And what it is, this view really says why you would, from an engineering perspective, choose a vehicle like this. It has the frontal areas of a motorcycle, or even smaller actually. it would be much lower budget than building a car. I could have a smaller garage, a smaller trailer, fewer wheels, fewer components, less horsepower because of the small cross-section. But I still have the stability and the safety as a car. In this picture, it looks kind of like a big, fat vehicle, but I am 5'2", and you can see this is a tiny vehicle. So it's 38 inches tall, and it's built just to fit me. So that was the plan. This is the most budget-friendly vehicle that would give us the most speed for a limited amount of money. What we were planning to spend and what we ended up spending was about the 10 times difference. But that's the kind of way projects goes. So I needed a team, and the team in this case were really just 2 people. It was me and my husband. My husband is quite a bit older than I am. His story is more amazing than mine, but we don't have time for that today. But so he was actually in the Air Force as young, generated power, caught airplanes in Maine and in Thailand. So he really has lots of experience in the engineering field. When we met, he was building an airplane in his garage. We ended up selling the airplane because we realized it would never be finished. An RV-7 is what he was building. And we bought the race trailer instead. But he had all the aircraft tools. So that was another reason, let's build something where we can use all these aircraft tools. So the team is a wife-husband team, mainly. Design-wise, it's about a 50-50. Work-wise, I've put in about 80% of the blood, sweat, tears, and hours in this vehicle because I simply had more time. Being a graduate student, I had a more flexible schedule than working a regular job. These days, those tables have turned, and my husband decided to retire, so he has more time, and I work more than full time, so now he has to put in more hours. We also have a group of volunteers helping. I don't have a good picture of everybody, so I just put in a picture of us too. But people chip in with different things, helping with software, data logging, et cetera, et cetera. But all together, it took us about 4 years, and it made me the world's fastest female motorcycle rider. You typically say that you're on a motorcycle, but in this case, you're actually inside a motorcycle. So that's what it looks inside. Quite claustrophobic, definitely not particularly comfortable, but it fills a function and you have to keep it as small as possible. So that's kind of the background story. What is the dream? What's the goal? The plan? I have a small video. It's about 1.5 minutes long. It's a footage from about 7 years of work, and it shows a bit of the story in images, and also gives a feel for what running for records at the Bonneville Salt Flats looks like. It is not glamorous at all. It's actually mostly just hard work. So you're out there for 5 days a year. Typically, it's an organized public event. Anyone can come there as long as you fill the safety rules. So let's just take a look at what Bonneville looks like. So that's 5 days of Bonneville and about 8 years of work condensed into 1.5 minutes. So if you, kind of the image of record setting is that this is really the 5 days you live for, this is the 5 days that matters. But in reality, those 5 days of racing every year is really just a final exam where you show what you have accomplished the last 360 days. So those 360 days are really much more important, and when you run a project, you really have to enjoy working those long stretches, hard work, long days. If you don't, then maybe you're in the wrong project. So you kind of have to accept that it's running that marathon. It's not the finishing line that really makes the marathon. It's everything that's before the finishing line. You may have noticed the very last clip. I opened the lid and I put my nose in under the bodywork. So an electric vehicle shouldn't smell like anything. It should be completely free of smells. And if anything smells, that means something is broken and it's probably very bad. And because I'm running this whole project to promote electric vehicles, my biggest fear is actually a fire. Not from a safety perspective, but from the bad publicity perspective. So I am totally anal retentive when it comes to these things, that this vehicle must be completely safe from that perspective. From a health and safety perspective, probably crashing would be much more dangerous. And I will get to that in a little bit. So those 360 days, the rest of the year, what does it look like? Here's a little bit of a glimpse from the working on a hobby project of a pretty big scale. That's machining a wheel center. That's the first test ride, Spring Break 2010. Also Spring Break 2010. That's probably about a year later or so. There it looks like it kind of does these days. Welding is one of my favorite activities. That's my superhero power. I can fuse metal with my hand and build things that have never existed before, and I think that's absolutely amazing. If you don't know how to weld, if you get a chance to learn it, you really want to learn it. I got a Guinness Book of World Record. A big deal from a publicity perspective, not such a big deal from a racing perspective, but absolutely super cool and helped that dream for sure. So this is the headquarters. This is a 2-car garage in Wheat Ridge, just west of Denver, where it was built. 99% of the vehicle was built in here in spare time. So you can make things, big things with small means if you really put your heart and soul into it. It's funny, this is a residential property in a blue-collar neighborhood. And I've had big cheeses from different companies come to visit at different times, and it's very interesting trying to schedule these. It's kind of, well, can you do Tuesday 10 o'clock? Well, that's not really good. Can you come later? And you try to puzzle these schedules together back and forth, and you finally say, can you come on Saturday? Yeah, sure. Do you work on a Saturday? And it's like, of course I work on a Saturday. It's a hobby project. Oh, I thought this was your full-time job. No. So they tried to book a visit within office hours, and that's the absolutely worst time, because that means we have to take time off from work to meet someone. So that gives, it kind of is showing that the impression of a small project with a small group of people can be making the people think it's a giant project. Another one is people come to visit, we give them the address, and then they call and it's like, we can't find this place. We're in a residential neighborhood. We must be in the wrong place. And you look out through the window, it's like, do you have a white car? Yeah, I'll see you, I'll come out. And they expect this giant factory with a big sign and a guard shed and someone's garage. So it's quite satisfying that you can give that impression of things you work on yourself. So in concept, an electric vehicle is very simple. It's a giant cordless drill with wheels. It's a motor, a battery, motor controller, and that's about it. In reality, the nitty-gritty details are quite difficult. But when you embark on a project of this magnitude, you don't have to know all of this. You don't have to know how to program motor controllers, how to specify motors, even how to weld, because these are the things you pick up along the way. That's the beauty with running a project forces you to learn. You have no choice. There's a problem that needs to be solved. If I don't figure out how to solve it, this component won't work, or we just won't get any further. So your education, you're getting a great education here as cadets. I'm very impressed with the curriculum. That is the basis, the concepts, the math, the physics, the chemistry, the basic mechanics. And that is the foundation, and anything else you need to know to run a project like this, you can pick up. So that's just, you will learn that in your capstone project. Some of you are already in capstone projects learning that lesson that you learn as you go. So if you're interested in all these technical details, I can't cover them in this presentation, but I have some postcards up here, has that picture on the back, has all the details, and everything else is also on my website. So this is Kilojoule. Kilojoule is now 9 years old. It's almost spring break, so it will turn 9 years old in just a few weeks. So it's getting old. It's too slow, too old, and also I see all the mistakes I made along the way, and I'm tired of it. So it's time for a new dream. Really, under my meme there should maybe be a new goal rather than a new dream, but I call it a new dream. So if we revisit this first slide, how fast is the fastest? I kind of need to pick a new spot where I want to be. Can't be up in 1,000 miles per hour. It's not realistic to start there. You have to set a realistic goal, even if you have a big dream. So somewhere around here, 400 to 500, that would be a sweet spot. That would beat Ohio State University. That would be sweet. Would beat the motorcycle record, and also start approaching the overall wheel-driven car record. So how do I get there? What's next? So my plan is a new bike. Green Envy is its name. Projects needs names because that gives them a personality, an individual, and also it kind of makes everybody work on towards the same goal. It's like the satellites have names, the different airplanes have names. Big projects often have mission names, and this is my mission name. So Green Envy, I need 1,000 horsepower to have a chance on that overall motorcycle record. Plan debut is 2020. That's tight. That's just a year yet left, but I have kind of committed to it, and I will make it happen in whatever way it needs to be done. The biggest roadblock, so there are all kinds of roadblocks. The first roadblock was the budget for the first bike, and that's how it became a motorcycle. That roadblock is back. It's my new roadblock again, and from my perspective, from my weaknesses and my skills, raising funding is the absolutely worst thing for me. I'm absolutely terrible at raising funding. I end up paying out of pocket for most things because it's easier. But being a lecturer, you just can't really fund this kind of project out of pocket. So I'm working on that one and overcoming that fundraising project. And I have people helping me with that. That's why you really need to pull in good team members. So what are the goals for Green Envy? The goal is to become the world's fastest motorcycle, period. I have the world's fastest electric, now I want the fastest overall. That will be a historical event. It will be the first time since 1899 that an electric vehicle took back an overall record for a vehicle category. And that's 376 miles per hour is the current record, so I'm shooting for 400. And also again, of course, the goal is to show that electric vehicles are not slow or boring. But there are more roadblocks, and lots of roadblocks. And some of them are not obvious until you run into them. You think it's going to be aerodynamics, you think it'll be this and that. Well, it turns out it's actually tires. Tires is the weakest link on a wheel-driven vehicle. You have a contact patch about the size of a matchbook. In my case, it's a motorcycle, so it only drives on one wheel. That little tiny patch, that is what transmits all those 1,000 horsepower to the ground, and is also the only thing that keeps you from going airborne. So that really is important. You think competition road racing tires are great. They run them in a GP. They must be of excellent quality, could take any speed on the planet. Well, no, they can't. So this is 213 miles per hour, was an interesting experience. So the way a land speed record attempt typically is done is that you given about 4 miles to get up to speed. You accelerate slowly because the salt is fairly slippery. Then over a flying mile, your speed is measured as time. So your time is measured and then it's calculated into an average speed. And then you have several miles to slow down. So I was in the measured miles, strapped in my little capsule, and I hear this sound, pop, 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 pop. It's like, what was that? And then a veil of smoke comes into my cockpit. It's like, oh shit, I'm on fire. And I'm at 230 miles per hour in a soda can. So I was just near the finishing line. I could see the 3 green flags coming up. So I turned off the throttle, pushed the brake shoot. It's brake shoes to slow down, coasted to a stop. And the way land speed events typically works is that if everything is fine, you turn out in one specific direction. If you have a problem and you think you're on fire, you turn out the other direction and they immediately deploy fire rescue will come down and help you. So I turned out the other way and I jumped out in record speed and nothing was wrong. Fire truck showed up and nothing was wrong. We looked, smelled, there was no smell, there was no fire, there was nothing. Got towed back to the pits. It was the second to last day of racing. So we just said, we're done, there's something wrong with the bike. We don't know what, but we're done. Time to quit. Got home, took all the bodywork off to clean off the salt, and then when I discovered pieces are missing out of my front tire. So that smoke was the tire getting so hot, it decomposed, bubbled up, and when this bubble burst, smoke came out, like a pimple. And what I heard was these rubber pieces hitting the inside of the fender. So I was like, okay, well, we're done with these tires, the best ones you can find for motorcycles. We have to do something better. Unfortunately, they don't really make high-speed motorcycle tires, so you have to go to car tires. So I went from that skinny little nice tire up to these giant balloon tires. Luckily, they fit because we had initially left enough room. But these are the best ones I can fit in my budget, and they're good for only 300 miles per hour. Well, I'm building a bike for 400 miles per hour. This won't work. There are some higher speed tires, but they're even bigger because they're designed for cars, and I don't want to go there. They're also really expensive. The really, really fast cars use up a set of tires per run, and a set tires can run you $10,000. I can't spend $10,000 per run. It's impossible. So I had to figure out something else. So this is kind of, okay, I have a roadblock. I don't have the budget. The technology isn't really here. What are we going to do? Let's use that knowledge, pull it together, and find a solution. So my husband Bill and I, we were dwelling on an idea. Can we make a non-pneumatic tire? So non-pneumatic means it's not air pumped. So another problem with the air pumped tires is they run pretty nicely. They provide a little bit of suspension. But if they were to blow out, you have no clue what happens. In best case, the pieces will just tear up your whole vehicle and you slide to a stop. In worst case, it will send you out airborne and you don't know what's going to happen. So having a non-pneumatic tire means it can't run flat. But it still has to have rubber because it's wheel-driven and it needs this grip. And if you look at the tires, they fail basically in the adhesion layers, where the rubber connects to the steel core. Between the rubber layers, that's where they fail. So can we do something that doesn't rely on basically glue? So the idea was, can we take a metal wheel and kind of, not literally, but virtually grow rubber hair through the wheel, so it's locked into place mechanically, and not adhesively. So it wouldn't be growing like self-healing materials, it'd be just kind of sticking out through the rim, but it wouldn't easily fall off. So we went into action because that's what we do. I happen to have a friend in Boulder, he has a CNC machine in his garage, works also at NOAA. At his day job, I bought a big piece of a billet from the aluminum scrapyard, and he machined the wheel for me. I drilled 400 holes in it. Well, before that, I printed 400 little rubber pieces on my little 3D printer, just like you have here, a lead spot. They have a little pull handle, so you dip them in soap, pull them through the rim, it locks into place. Here it is, the whole hairy tire, and it's really the hairy tire. And then you cut them off, and you get something like a 2-day beard look for your tire. Probably wouldn't be according to protocol, but works great in racing. So there it is, and because you work evenings and weekends, we were done the day before we had to leave Bonneville, so there was no test drive or anything. We just loaded up and took it off. There's Bill, by the way, my husband. And there it is a little bit closer up. So we unloaded it, took it for my first run. So at this kind of performance level, you always do a shakedown run, the first run, because I haven't ridden in a year, the bike hasn't run in a year, you don't know what's going to break or fall off. At this performance level, a shakedown run is like 200 miles per hour, which feels insanely slow when you've gone that fast before. And this time I did 159 because it was kind of a bumpy surface and poor salt year. But it held together, it didn't explode, it didn't fall off. So it showed some promise. There it is, full of salt. What I hadn't thought of was so focused on this rubber piece not flying out from centrifugal force. But what happened, I had a little bit of printing issues, didn't have time to reprint all my rubber elements. So when they got a little bit worn, they actually got pushed in from the vehicle weight. And these are things you're so focused on the centrifugal force, you forget that they actually has to hold the vehicle weight and not get pushed in. So that was really the only thing that didn't work out well. Everything else worked well in the concept. So there it is, the wheel. The good thing with this test was it really proved the concept, and when I came to University of Auckland, because I had already done this crazy stuff in my garage, they gave me a small research grant, $20,000, to make a whole full set of wheels a better way. So something like this was the idea, back to the drawing board. This is Autodesk Inventor, kind of big sister to the Fusion 360 that you get taught here. So there was the idea, instead of doing 3D printed rubber, let's go with an industrial grade rubber. So got into action again. Of course, always time is short, money is short. I didn't want to go out to a mold maker and pay thousands of dollars to have a mold made. So I just thought, you know, I can 3D print this stuff. But first, running through the analysis to make sure this would really hold for 400 miles per hour. Looks fine. Tested out rubbers. That turned out to be quite hard to find a good rubber for this application, but this is a good candidate. And then went into action. So I 3D printed myself a plug, poured a silicone mold, a 2-component silicone, made myself a lid in my little home workshop, and there is a mold for a rubber tread pattern. Learned how to cast industrial rubber. It turns out that is not easy. I hope I never have to do it again. I thought I could whip this out in 2 days in the university lab, and I ended up spending at least 3 weeks there over the last few months. The technician just laughed at me because I'm the only lecturer that's actually doing work in the lab. So they just poured in the mold, there the lid is on. The grocery store only had unicorn happy birthday cups for paper cups. Got a good laugh out of the PhD students, but they're very cute. I felt bad throwing them away, but they, you know, the rubber hardens and they're disposable. Cooked it in the oven, made all my pieces, lots of pieces, and then assembled it. So here was the new idea for the wheel, the same basic idea. It doesn't held together with rubber, held together with mechanical strength and screws. And you can see the original tire underneath. And there it is installed. And the most important thing was this contact patch. So the reason you can't just run on a metal wheel with cut thread is that you get a line contact and you just break the ground. You can't really get enough grip. And we got the contact patch exactly what the analysis said it was going to be. And thumbs up for my little mascot. This is my action figure. I made myself a Barbie version. I have it when I do school visits. She's super popular among little kids. I figured Barbie has to be a race car driver. Yeah, she's a pilot already. She has to be a race car driver. Funniest thing, so I'm trying to kind of break the stereotypes, showing that Barbie can do this. I was at the car show in November. I had a little boy, but that tall. He was holding my doll and just looking at her, looking at me, looking at her, and then he finally said with kind of angry, annoyed voice and said, "Boys can be race car drivers too." So I think that mission is accomplished. So here it is up close. It looks like something NASA would put on the Mars rover. But if NASA had designed this, it would probably roll out the message in Morse code as I drove along. This one has no message. Didn't have time for that. But that's the finished look. It's pretty. I think it's pretty sexy, just this look. But that's from an engineering perspective. And I share everything I do. I'm an open book because the mission is not only to promote electric vehicles, but actually to promote engineering and women in STEM. So to summarize this meme, I made my own version. I love memes. I'm just obsessed with memes. I collect memes. I have folders full of memes. I never make them, I just collect them. But my summary of this and the whole story and my own experience for running relatively big projects seen from your personal perspective is that you have to dream big. Never ever listen if someone tells you can't dream. You have to dream big. But you have to set a realistic goal. Yes, I'm dreaming about the supersonic electric car, but that is currently not the realistic goal. I have to set something that's within reach, within my resources. And you have to set the date. That's why I like racing. It's a specific date when you have to be done. And if you're not there on the starting line, you're not going to finish. So that makes racing very attractive from a project management perspective. You have to make a slightly pessimistic plan. Everything takes 3 times longer than you think, even if you think it will take 3 times longer than you think. You have to get into action. So people always talk about the power of your thought. Your thought doesn't have any power. Your actions have the power. No action, there is no result. And you have to not give up. So you have to learn how to rest, not how to quit. And that is how a dream becomes reality, big or small. So I have a couple of more slides. And one of the big things in all project management is don't give up, because you're going to run into roadblocks. If you think things are going to be smooth sailing, you're wrong, and you're up for nasty surprises. And here's one of my favorite sayings. It's sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains. This was 2015, it rained, the Bonneville salt flats were flooded. We learned that the day just after we showed up, the event was canceled. All events were canceled the whole year. We got some cool photos. But what he also gave us was another 360 days to actually work. So you just go home and you continue and you plan for the next year. So my very last slide is part of working on my own weaknesses. So my main weakness is really fundraising. I've always been really bad at that. So I have a quick commercial break to include in my last slide. You can go there, click on the banner on the website, and you can get your name there. And that's all I had to say. Thank you. So I just realized I'm just going to cut in 1 minute. I forgot to send around my props. We have about 5 minutes for questions, I think. I'm just going to send these out, and then I'm going to make an announcement there, I think.
Yes.
Sorry.
Dr. Hakansson, thank you so much for your insights. We are now open to questions. I'll give a 2-minute warning when there's about time for one more question. So, thank you.
So what I'm sending out here is a mock-up of this new wheel. The rubber is the real rubber. It's just kind of a poor casting, so it ended up being a demo piece. And of course, the 3D printed piece is not the true material. It's a forged machined aluminum. So if you have a question, please raise your hand, and there will be a microphone coming your way. Questions?
Explain again why you did 3 wheels instead of 2.
Okay, so I will repeat the question. So the question is, why 3 wheels instead of 2? That's a great question. And it kind of brings us up to this, the timeline of speeds. If you look, you can see the 4-wheeled vehicles are the very fastest, and the 2-wheeled vehicles are quite a bit slower. And the reason for that is, there's several reasons for that. A 2-wheeled vehicle is inherently unstable. Anyone who knows that has ridden a motorcycle. And it's not a matter of when 2-wheeled vehicles, if they crash, it's a matter of when they crash. And because of the instability, that gives them a very little window of operation. It has to be basically calm day. 3 miles per hour crosswind is typically the limit for these vehicles. Try to find a 15-mile stretch with less than 3 miles per hour crosswind for a whole week to do racing. It just doesn't happen. These teams typically sit for days, sometimes even for weeks, waiting for good weather. I can run if it's legal, which is 11 miles per hour tailwind is what I'm allowed to. So with 3 wheels, I can run all day long. If they can run a normal sit-on motorcycle, I can run because I'm so much less wind sensitive. Because also of the better stability, I can put down power much more aggressively because I don't have to be worried about handling issues because it drives like a car. And then there's a benefit that we hadn't expected that was a surprise to us. So in this vehicle class, horizontal airfoils, like spoilers, are outlawed on motorcycles. So it's very hard to get sufficient traction because you can't get downforce. Cars have spoilers, big wings. Motorcycles are not allowed to have that unless they have a sidecar. Now you have a sidecar platform, which actually has to be a specific minimum size, and you can turn that into an airfoil and create downforce. So I get about 200 pounds of downforce, which gives me excellent traction and stability. So these were just kind of the benefits of 3 wheels. And then so it's the safety, stability, downforce, It also sits in the garage without falling over. That's a serious thing. It's like, how do you have a two-wheel motorcycle has to be propped up on stands, or it just wants to be on its side. It wants to be on its side all the time if it's allowed to. And if you look at the scale, you have the two-wheeled motorcycles, well, they're like there, you have the four-wheeled cars, and then you kind of realize, why wouldn't the three-wheeled vehicle kind of be in the middle, speed-wise? It has some of the drawback compared to cars, because it only drives on one wheel, but it has lots of benefit compared to two-wheelers. And a three-wheeled vehicle is still a motorcycle under international competition rules. So it's kind of a loophole to build an asymmetric car that's qualified as a motorcycle, so you can beat motorcycle record. And that was just, it was an optimization in the rule book and in engineering. So it was an odd solution, but it turned out to be a great solution. A long answer to a short question.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this would be our last question, so thank you.
Ma'am, right here. Cadet Killer Class Harris, Cadet Squadron 13. I was a little curious, so in your presentation you talk a lot about how to make dreams into something real or something like a plan. How did you go about defining the initial problem itself, going from that dream to goal to a plan? Like where did you make some key decisions, and how did you go about doing that?
Oh, how do you go from the dream to the goal to the plan? I don't know. How do you come up with dreams? It was just a dream. I mean, I love electric vehicles, and I was kind of upset that other people didn't realize it. They laughed at me because I liked electric vehicles, thought, oh, that's stupid. And I know my husband had a conversation, and he drove an electric car since 1995. He converted his own electric car. And like his friend said, oh, it must take you a long time to get to work. And she thought it was like a little golf cart. He had a 200 horsepower Volkswagen Rabbit that would do, huge burnouts and beat anything at the stoplights. But the conception from his friends were that this was super slow. So it was kind of this just annoyance of people didn't get what I was trying to do. So the dream was educate the world and get people to buy these vehicles, and it will be a better place. Sounds kind of like a hubris almost in dreams, but that was really what I wanted. So it's up to you what your dream is. Or maybe your dream is just to work on the coolest project in the world. So the dream is completely your personal idea of what you want to do. That wasn't a good answer, but it's the only thing I can really, the dream is yours, and then the goal is kind of the practical matters of making your dream reality.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.